Currently, over 130 million girls are denied the right to attend school. Carbon emissions have also increased drastically across the globe, and natural disasters have become far too frequent. What if I told you these seemingly unrelated problems could be mitigated by one sector of action? Well, it can. Drawdown, the most comprehensive plan ever proposed to reverse global warming, ranks the educating of girls as sixth most important and will achieve the sixth highest results by 2050 to reduce carbon emissions. Now, this ranking may be surprising to some. After all, why would educating girls, obviously an important humanitarian mission, have anything to do with global warming? For starters, achieving high rates of education amongst the world's female population has the potential to reduce the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere by 59.6 gigatons. But how? Well, it turns out that there are three main benefits to educating women in relation to reducing carbon emissions. First, it can lead to healthier, better educated, and more financially secure families. Also, education will lead to an increase in women's ability to adapt to a changing climate. Finally, education provides women with the tools to support themselves in environmentally friendly ways. The first, and arguably the most impactful climate-related benefit of educating girls, is the impact it has on families in terms of number and health. Women with more years of schooling tend to have healthier and less children, with better health as well as increase the quality of their reproductive health. In a study published by the Science Journal, if all nations achieved 100% enrollment of girls in grades 1 through 8 by 2050, the population would decrease by 843 million people. When girls are educated in schools, they tend to wait longer to get married and to have children. They also become more economically empowered, allowing them to access healthcare services like birth control. In nations where there are the lowest rates of education for girls, the population is increasing the fastest. Thus, increasing female education in these areas would curb population growth. However, it is still important to note that these regions are not nearly as responsible for the amount of carbon emissions produced globally. In Madagascar, only 1/10 of a ton of carbon dioxide per person is produced in a year, while 18 tons per person are produced per year in the United States. The second climate-related benefit of educating women and girls is that it increases the ability of women to adapt to a changing climate and be resilient in terms of the impacts of climate change. Statistically, women and girls are more negatively impacted by climate disasters than men. For example, Bangladeshi women weren't taught to swim, but floods have become drastically more frequent, causing greater death and injury of women than men. Educating girls is directly associated with a reduction in vulnerability to natural disasters. Women are less likely to be killed or injured, and also have a better ability to cope and recover from these natural disasters. Third, educating women leads to an increase in women's leadership for sustainable, low-carbon pathways to prosperity. Educated women are able to take action with increased knowledge, as well as inherited traditional knowledge, to protect themselves and their loved ones. Additionally, educating women can allow them to farm better in a changing climate, as well as follow weather patterns. Some programs teach women climate-smart agriculture. One such program is CamFed, which teaches green work to improve agricultural production and increase the efficiency and effectiveness of using resources. It also lays a foundation for green work to continue in agriculturally based societies. An additional benefit of investing in girls' education is that it is highly cost competitive with current options for reducing carbon emissions. Possibly only $10 need be spent to reduce 1 ton of carbon dioxide. With all these benefits, what's stopping us from implementing programs to educate girls and women? Well, there are a few types of barriers. Economic barriers such as a lack of funds in communities and families, cultural barriers including the belief that girls should be homemakers or should be forced into an early marriage, safety barriers such as schools at a far distance from one's home can put girls at an increased risk of gender-based violence, and other obstacles such as disability, pregnancy, or female genitalia mutilation. Unfortunately, the COVID-19 pandemic was a major setback for girls' education in particular. To overcome these hurdles and help both girls and the earth, we must take action. According to What Works in Girls' Education, there are 7 interconnected areas that must be addressed with direct intervention to improve access and quality of education. 1. Augment the affordability of schools. For example, provide funds or stipends to families and communities to send their children, specifically girls, to school. 2. Help girls overcome sickness or health barriers. For example, offer deworming treatments at schools. 3. Reduce the time and distance to get to school by providing bikes. 4. Make schools more girl-friendly. For example, childcare services for young mothers can be offered. 5. Improve school quality by hiring qualified teachers. 6. Increase community engagement by engaging local education activists. 7. Sustain girls' education during crises, for example, in refugee crises.
Hi everyone, today I'll be talking about clean cook stoves and their impact on the environment. So what are clean cook stoves and how do they impact the environment? As we all know, humans use fire and heat on stoves to cook food. Most of the cooking fuels that we use, like coal or wood, release smoke and soot that pollutes the air. Cooking comprises 2 to 5% of global greenhouse gas emissions annually. When cooking, black carbon remains in the atmosphere for only a brief period of time, but its effects are detrimental to human health. This pollution is the leading environmental cause of death and disability and is responsible for approximately 4.3 million premature deaths annually. Clean cook stoves are intended to help curb emissions by reducing biomass consumption. Some stoves with intermediate chimney rockets help with fuel savings, and then more advanced biomass stoves cut emissions by forcing gas and smoke from incomplete combustion back into the stoves, which is a process known as gasification. And solar cookers can also be a clean solution, but they require sunlight. And emission models estimate that 43% of fuel is saved from clean cook stoves as opposed to traditional stoves. The adaptation of clean cook stoves in the near future is very realistic, as 53% of families in all regions, excluding OECD 90 and Eastern European countries, are already using clean cook stoves. The Global Alliance for Clean Cook Stoves is already working to implement clean cook stoves globally, and especially in Asia and Africa where they're most needed. There are 2 device scenarios for which clean cook stoves will be implemented. The first is to align the expansion of clean cook stove accessibility with the International Energy Agency's, or IEA, New Policy Scenario, or NPS, for energy savings. And this scenario would reduce emissions by about 31 gigatons of carbon dioxide, including 8 gigatons of black carbon. Because the average first cost of an improved clean cook stove is $45, this would amount to a cost of $136 billion and also raise lifetime fuel and operating costs of the stoves by about $2 trillion. This would increase clean cooking access to about 84% globally. The second scenario would be to follow the UN's goal of achieving 100% access to clean cooking by 2030. And this scenario would reduce emissions by 73 gigatons of CO2, including 20 gigatons of black carbon. However, this would cost $291 billion and also raise lifetime fuel and operating costs by $4.2 trillion. To sum up, clean cook stoves are better for human health and more effective at slowing climate change. Because clean cook stoves conserve fuel, that frees up time for girls and women who are in charge of cooking in the household in developing countries and will also help to curb poverty, since individuals won't have to collect resources for cooking as often. And then the drawbacks of clean cook stoves is that they're very expensive and they also may require more advanced fuels. Not to mention they're not very durable and some don't even make much of a difference. And a lot of the stoves can only accommodate one pot at a time, which is pretty inconvenient. And also some others that are designed in a laboratory setting don't necessarily transition smoothly to real life. Here is a list of the sources that I used while working on this project. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed my presentation about clean cook stoves.
Forest Protection by Luke Feltson. Long, long ago, when hunters and gatherers were using stone tools, and the dinosaurs roamed around, well, not that long ago, the planet's forest covered large amounts of land yet to be bothered by humans. Forests, called primary forest, for example, the forest of the Amazon and the Congo, grew and grew and grew. As civilizations grew, forests were cut and cut. Soil eroded, rain stopped feeding the forest soil but started removing it. Dead and salt pans were appearing where crops once thrived. Fast forward to the future, there are around 3 trillion trees on Earth. These primary forests are teeming with life and are the greatest reservoirs of biodiversity on the planet, containing 300 billion tons of carbon. but more than 15 billion are cut down each year, and since humans began farming, the amount of trees has fallen by almost 46%. Why are forests important? Forests are the best natural system for the sequestration of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, which greatly helps the mitigation of climate change. How does it work? Trees breathe carbon dioxide, then release oxygen, storing carbon in their trunks. My topic, forest protection, is the method of ensuring these trees' safety. Due to the impacts of carbon sequestration and storage, forest protection is one of the most powerful solutions for global warming. Furthermore, 20% of greenhouse gas emissions are related to deforestation and other types of land use change. Adoption of forest protection is very realistic and is already being implemented currently. Forest protection will undoubtedly continue into the future. Companies are already taking action. Soy traders have agreed to embargo products from recently deforested land. 65 of 95 slaughterhouses signed deforestation commitments. Also, countries are taking action. Brazil recently received an $100 million grant from Norway from a $1 billion fund that rewards countries who reduce deforestation. With projections showing rainforests being gone in 40 years from deforestation, action needs to be taken. One study estimates that for $50 billion a year, tropical deforestation can be reduced by 66%. A negative of forest protection is the high cost of making large impacts. The specific financial impact by 2050 isn't able to be calculated. A positive, however, is anyone can contribute to forest protection. Communities near forests are taking action to protect and replant trees. People are advocating for constructive legislation in Congress. Other ways you can help is to educate yourself, plant trees, buy Rainforest Alliance certified products, support conservation organizations, use tree-free products, and enjoy forests responsibly. What is the possible impact of protecting forests? By protecting 687 million acres of forest, we could reduce 6.2 gigatons of CO2 by 2050, bring total protected forest area to almost 2.3 billion acres, which would lead to a stock of 245 gigatons of carbon, translating to more than 895 gigatons of CO2 released. Forest protection is ranked 38th in ways to save by 2050. We need to protect forests so that we can mitigate the devastating impacts deforestation has on our environment and on our future.
Okay, so basically today's presentation is on the captivating world of battery storage and its pivotal role in the realm of energy. Okay, so I guess I'll start with explaining how it works. So the diagram shows a lithium-ion cell, which depicts an anode and a cathode, or a positive and negative. In between these two is a separator called an electrolyte, which is a bridge for the flow of charged particles. This creates an electric current that powers your devices today. So in the grand scheme of things, battery storage is one part of a larger operation. Here illustrated, you can see how battery banks are part of a bigger picture. They are used to store many renewable resources of energy such as solar panels. This in turn helps promote CO2 reduction, which brings me to my next point. A recent study published by the International Journal of Renewable Resources suggests that we need to store at least 5% of the total renewable energy production capacity in order to replace fossil fuels completely. In 2019 alone, we consumed roughly 173,000 tons of terawatt hours of energy, and 85% of it coming from fossil fuels. To put it in perspective, it's enough money to power 1 million homes for 700 years. Or for Edward's understanding, that's 1 million Tesla Model 3s charged fully 90,000 times each. The amount of gigatons of CO2 reduced by the help of battery storage is substantial. However, it doesn't have an exact number. This is because battery storage plays a big role in every energy plant there is. Battery allows for electricity to be saved for later, which creates an efficient process in the moments energy is required. This can offset the need for building new pollution-emitting power plants, as the majority of renewable energy sources require a high setup cost. Net cost would initially be very high. However, over the long term, net savings would be substantial, as the world is finite on natural resources. Therefore, due to supply and demand, it would only get more expensive to use non-renewable resources. One innovative idea in the battery storage industry is the concept of second life batteries. Second life batteries refer to the repurposing and reuse of retired electrical vehicles, EV batteries, for stationary energy storage applications. As electric vehicles age, their battery may lose some capacity or reach the end of their useful life for automotive purposes. However, these batteries often retain a significant portion of their capacity and can still be valuable in other applications such as stationary energy storage. By repurposing these retired EV batteries, their successful life can be extended, maximizing the value and sustainability of battery technology. Those second life batteries can be integrated into grid scale energy storage applications, commercial buildings, and residential applications, and offering more cost effective and environmentally friendly solutions compared to manufacturing entirely new batteries. Additionally, second life batteries provide an amazing opportunity to create a circular economy within the battery industry, reducing waste and minimizing the need for new materials. By carefully managing the collection, testing, refurbishment process, the industry can unlock the potential retired EV batteries contribute to the growing demand of stationary energy storage. This innovative idea is not only addresses the sustainable use of resources, but also offers a more affordable option for battery storage deployment, making it an attractive proposition for various stakeholders in the energy industry. And lastly, just to conclude, additional information, I just added top four upcoming battery storage stocks, which include companies such as Tesla, Panasonic, Enphase, and BYD Company Limited. So these are all companies that are making developments within the battery storage community and world, and you should definitely keep a lookout for later.
Tidal and wave energy by Zabdia Alvarez. Tidal and wave energy is extracted using OWCs, or oscillating water columns. Oscillating water columns are columns of water. The oscillating water columns work by using the rising and falling tides to create movement in the air of a container. This displacement of air moves the turbines within the oscillating water columns and spins them, generating energy in a way similar to other wind turbines. The difference between this turbine and others is in the design. The Wells turbine is a specially designed turbine that spins in the same direction regardless of which way the air within the chamber is moving. This allows energy to be generated both while the tides are receding and heightening. One reason why it is not more utilized than it is now is because of the extremely high initial cost for creating oscillating water columns. Because the industry for this isn't very developed, prices are still high while it's in its infancy, and as more join in collecting tidal energy, the cost of individual creation will decrease accordingly. Currently, the cost of implementing a tidal plant is 6 to 12 times more expensive than a wind plant. This is a design of a Wells turbine. The likelihood of being implemented is extremely high, as there are already places in the world that utilize oscillating water columns, such as the Matriku plant in Spain. This video is demonstrating the waves receding and proceeding and how the air spins the wind turbines accordingly. As the wind moves, the turbines spin because of the symmetrical design of the Wells turbine. No matter if it's going up or down, it will all push in one direction, causing it to spin. The advantages of oscillating water columns are that tides are easy to predict, meaning the amount of energy produced and the intensity of the waves can be measured, along with reducing possible damages to the turbines themselves. It's also a renewable energy source, so that in itself is a bonus, which means that it will help in limiting the CO2 produced by fossil fuels. The disadvantages are the geological lock of oscillating water columns. They can only be onshore, and that's the only place that you will be able to produce tidal energy. This means that you'll have to find a way to transfer the power generated from these onshore plants inland. Also, the impact to marine life is not non-existent, and depending on the method used to harness tidal energy, marine life can be disrupted, as well as the ecosystems that they live in close to the shores.
Hi, this is Jimmy. My topic is peatland, which is ranked number 13 of its efficiency to help global warming. Peatlands are a type of wetland characterized by the accumulation of dead and decomposing plant matter in a waterlogged and oxygen-deprived environment. Over hundreds, even thousands of years, layers of peat rich in carbon develop. The ability of peatlands to store carbon depends on the presence of water, which creates the necessary anaerobic conditions, and the plants absorb and store carbon through photosynthesis. Peatlands play a big role in carbon sequestration, capturing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere through photosynthesis. The carbon remains stored in the peat due to the anaerobic condition created by waterlogging. This mechanism can help offset greenhouse gases emission. When properly managed and preserved, peatlands can effectively collect carbon, absorb and purify water, protect against floods, and support biodiversity. Worldwide, the remaining area of near natural peatlands, over 3 million square kilometers, sequesters 0.37 gigatons of CO2 a year. Peat soils contain more than 600 gigatons of carbon, which represents up to 44% of all soil carbon, and it exceeds the carbon stored in all other vegetation types, including the world's forest. To re-wet 40% of drained peatlands by 2050, annual global investments in peatland restoration must rise from nearly $19 billion annually to $31 billion by 2030, to $39 billion by 2040, and then in excess of $46 billion by 2050. The protection, management, and the restoration of peatlands are realistic, with strategies like re-wetting drained peatlands and practicing polluted culture. However, these strategies require significant coordination, public awareness, and implementation at various levels from local to national and international. Also, it's necessary to create incentives for maintaining or restoring peatlands, especially if that means foregoing other economic gains from growing food or timber. And here's the equation of photosynthesis, which tells us that 6 molecules of carbon dioxide combined with 6 molecules of water using sunlight energy. The products of this reaction are 1 molecule of glucose and 6 molecules of oxygen. Various national and cross-border initiatives are already underway to protect and restore peatlands, suggesting that implementation is not only possible but is already happening. If the total protected area of peatlands increased from 7.9 million acres to 608 million acres by 2050, which would be 67% of all current intact peatlands, this could help avoid 21.6 gigatons of carbon dioxide emission. Peatlands will hold a protected stock of 336 gigatons of carbon, or roughly 1,230 gigatons of carbon dioxide if it were released into the atmosphere. So with all being said, peatlands reduce CO2 by photosynthesis, but there is a potential risk which can alternate this, which is wildfire. Peatlands fires release substantial amount of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases, such as methane, which can cause furthermore global warming, and it's bad. Thank you for watching and listening.
Women smallholders face a gender gap in the field of agriculture in many low-income countries. This means that the resources available to men and women are different and unfair. Family planning is important because choosing when to have a family versus it happening by chance can have a huge impact on our planet. Due to lack of planning and resources, there have been over 74 million unintended pregnancies in low-income countries. According to the FAO, which is the Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations, if women smallholders had access to the resources, all the resources that men had, they would have farm yields of over 20% to 30% more. And this total agricultural output will increase in low-income countries by up to 4%, and this will help to drop the number of undernourished people from 17 to 12%, which is crazy. Family planning tends to focus on meeting women's needs, empowerment, equality, and well-being. And while these are all important, sometimes the effects to the planet are benched. One of the ways that Drawdown suggests to help curb this is in low-income neighborhoods is to teach about family planning and how to not have unplanned pregnancies and to have education about it. Currently, there is a $5.3 billion funding shortfall for providing access to reproductive health care for women. And there have been a striking number of successful efforts and success stories in family planning. One example is in Iran, and they put a program in 1990, and this has been one of the most successful efforts in history. The importance of women smallholders helps to reduce emissions from deforestation, and this increases the number of women helping out in agriculture. And it will help and it could reduce up to 2.1 gigatons of carbon dioxide by 2050. People increasingly adopting reproductive health care and family planning is an essential component to the UN's 2015 global projection of 9.7 billion people by 2050. And using this model, the resulting emission reduction could be up to 119.2 gigatons of CO2. And this would be at an average cost of $10.77 per user in a low-income country. Educating girls has an important impact because on the use of family planning, and they allocate 50% of the total potential emissions reduction to each solution, which is 59.6 gigatons apiece. So for women smallholders, there's not really a cost projection, as it's really just giving women the opportunity to have the same resources that men do. So there's no really cost for that. But for family planning, the cost is about $10.77 per user in a low-income neighborhood. Well, that's not too much money. Sometimes in these low-income neighborhoods, those $10 can seem like a lot. So that's why there's a lot of UN programs in place to help this. I think that the realistic adaptation of our projects will take a lot of time over time, and I think implementing it in parts will be important. This is not one thing that you can just implement and it'll help. You need to implement it in parts and in different communities that need it, and then you'll see the impact. So maybe starting small in like a small city in a country that you're passionate about, and then you can continue to grow it out long term, because if you implement it too big to start, then it'll fail. So you need to have the right teachings in place and the right equipment in place for these to work. The advantages of women smallholders is everything. Making women equal to men has been a goal for a very long time, and that's just gender equality. And you can see it in the workplace. You can see it all over. So in this small area, having gender equality will help women have gender equality, but it'll also help the environment by reducing the amount of CO2 emissions. There's no disadvantages for that, but for family planning, the advantages are that you can plan and you can support your child in the best way possible while also reducing the amount of carbon emissions. Some of the disadvantages of this would be that sometimes you can't always plan it and you might not be able to give them the best life, but that's why there are services in place to help you when you can't do it.
Nowadays, people are more and more aware of the importance of a good environment.
the topic of sustainable fuels gradually appeared in the public eye. Sustainable fuels are a critical component of our strategy to combat climate change and create a more sustainable world. Bill Gates. Sustainable fuels are energy sources that can be produced and consumed without causing significant harm to the environment, human health, and economic development. And these are the types of renewable resources, including wind, solar, biomass, geothermal, hydropower, and so on. The use of these renewable sources is that they can reduce carbon emissions and combat climate change, reduce air pollution, and promote economic development and energy security. The sustainable fuel we're going to talk about in this video is the SAFs, which is known as the Sustainable Aviation Fuels. SAF, made from renewable biomass and waste resources, have the potential to deliver the performance of petroleum-based jet fuel, but with a fraction of its carbon footprint, giving airlines solid footing for decoupling greenhouse gas emissions from flights. A menu for SAFs are corn grain, oilseeds, other fats, oils and greases, agricultural residues, forestry residues, wood mill waste, municipal solid waste streams, wet waste, and dedicated energy crops. And here's the chemical reaction of the SAFs. Renewable biomass or waste plus oxygen goes to hydrocarbon mixture plus carbon dioxide plus water. And here are the advantages of the SAFs. SAF benefits beyond lowering GHG emissions growing, sourcing, and producing SAF from renewable and waste sources can create new economic opportunities in farming communities, improve the environment, and even boost aircraft performance. By growing biomass crops for SAF production, American farmers can earn more money during off-seasons by providing feedstocks to this new market, while also securing benefits for their farms, like reducing nutrient losses and improving soil quality. Biomass crops can control erosion and improve water quality and quantity. They can also increase biodiversity and store carbon in the soil, which can deliver on-farm benefits and environmental benefits across the country. Producing SAF from wet waste, like manure and sewage sludge, reduces pollution pressure on watersheds, while also keeping potent methane gas, a key contributor to climate change, out of the atmosphere. Many SAFs contain fewer aromatic components, which enables them to burn cleaner in aircraft engines. This means lower local emissions of harmful compounds around airports during takeoff and landing. The challenges of the SAFs are the production capacity, cost, and the technological advancement. One of the primary challenges is the limited production capacity of SAFs. Currently, SAFs account for only a small fraction of total aviation fuel consumption due to limited production facilities. Scaling up production to meet the growing demand for SAFs is crucial but requires substantial investments and infrastructure development. Also, SAFs are generally more expensive to produce than conventional jet fuels. The production process for SAFs, such as biomass conversion or synthetic fuel production, are often complex and energy intensive, contributing to a higher production cost. The cost difference between SAFs and conventional fuels poses a significant barrier to their widespread adoption. What's more, continued research and development are required to improve the efficiency and cost effectiveness of SAF production processes. Advancements in technologies like biomass conversion or electrofuels hold promise but are still in the early stages of development. Enhancements in these areas are necessary to make SAFs more competitive with conventional fuels. Here are the statistics. SAF's lower carbon intensity makes it an important solution for reducing aviation GHGs, which make up 9% to 12% of U.S. transportation GHG emissions, according to the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. And here are the future of the SAFs.
It is expected that SAF required for net zero until 2050 is 449 billion liters, and 65% contribution to achieving net zero carbon. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Today I'll be talking about a fascinating topic, repopulating the mammoth steppe, by Frank Liao. To start with, what is the mammoth steppe? The mammoth steppe was a vast grassland ecosystem that spanned across northern Eurasia and North America during the last ice age. It was home to incredible creatures like the woolly mammoth. Now the question, how does this work? Scientists are exploring the possibility through genetic engineering and cloning technology. They aim to use the preserved genetic material from well-preserved mammoth remains to sequence the complete genome of the species. Now an example of this method. We can do it by modifying the genome of the Asian elephant, which is one of the most common elephant nowadays. Create an elephant-mammoth hybrid with some of the traits of the extinct mammoth. But why are we doing this? Because it will result in a positive environmental change. Repopulating the mammoth steppe has the potential to significantly reduce CO2 levels. The large herbivores, such as mammoths and mammoth-like creatures, could promote the growth of grasslands, which will aid in carbon sequestration, potentially leading to a reduction of gigatons of CO2 emissions. Now we have to introduce the idea of permafrost. Permafrost is a thick layer of perennially frozen, carbon-rich soil that covers 24% of the northern hemisphere. According to the EnergyMix.com, there are 1.4 trillion tons/gigatons of carbon in the permafrost layer. As the permafrost layer melts, these carbon are going to transform into carbon dioxide and emit into the air. The resurrection of the mammoth steppe could stop this from happening and help the 1.4 gigaton of carbon sequestered in the permafrost. Here's a picture of how the mammoth steppe would look like. After exploring the repopulation of the mammoth steppe, we must address its costs. The exact figures are still uncertain as this is an ongoing area of research. However, initial estimates suggest that there may be a net cost associated with the genetic engineering, cloning, and habitat restoration efforts. However, the potential long-term benefits in terms of ecosystem restoration and carbon sequestration could yield significant net savings. According to Colossal, a biotech company dedicated to resurrect the ancient beast, they have raised $60 million for this program and will hopefully reintroduce the woolly mammoth to Siberia again. Speaking of mammoth, I suggest everyone to watch Ice Age. It's a great film series. Here's my works cited page where I got my information from. Thank you for listening.
Hello everybody, today I'm going to be introducing mass transit and how it can severely cut down CO2 emissions. Mass transit refers to any sort of transport system that can move a majority of people in a quick and timely fashion. Mass transit usually requires dedicated infrastructure built to accommodate all types of people. Mass transit includes various amounts of transportation, including buses, trains, trams, subways, light rails, or ferries. This type of transit is usually used in cities, which allow for easier transport around cars, which would take a lot of time due to traffic, and also is significantly more affordable. CO2 is a molecule with two oxygen and one carbon, with a double bond between each oxygen and carbon. CO2 hurts the environment by trapping in heat. It is referred to as a greenhouse gas. This trapping of heat causes ice caps to melt, causing flooding, and also hurts indigenous populations of plants and other life forms because they're not adapted to the increase of heat. The transport system already accounts for a whopping 23% of total global emissions, and it can be cut down significantly if people start using more mass transit forms of transportation, such as buses and railways, instead of their cars. For example, a single bus can take a load of up to 40 cars, significantly reducing emissions. If mass transport use was increased from 37% to 40%, it could save 6.57 gigatons of reduced CO2 emissions and 2.38 million in net savings. Furthermore, another reason that mass transit will reduce CO2 emissions is that according to Reason.org, a passenger car carrying one person emits 89 pounds of CO2 per 100 passenger miles, while a full bus only emits 14 pounds. Costs to build up infrastructure for mass transit will obviously be substantial. For example, while building a bus costs 50 times less than building a railway system, each mile for a bus costs $10.24 million. While the cost of a project that would make the use of a mass amount of mass transit would be substantial, there is no exact figure. While much of the infrastructure for mass transit is already in place, something that could help expedite the process for more people to make mass transit usable would be the use of an app that can both plan and pay for visits to things like the metro and bus lines and kind of like all mass transport systems, which currently doesn't exist. Implementation of my project is also more realistic since the fact that more people are living in cities. As you can see by this graph, which shows the percentage of people that are living in urban areas in the purple, it's dramatically increasing from 1800 to 2020. Due to the reasons that I just listed prior, and the fact that a majority of the infrastructure is already in place, as you can see here in this picture, there's railway lines stretching all across the country, even in really rural areas. So yes, I do feel that it is likely that my project will be implemented in the future. Another reason why I think the use of mass transport is going to be more likely is the fact that the price of cars are increasing. This graph here accounts for inflation, but yet there's still almost a $10,000 increase. In fact, it's even greater than a $10,000 increase in the price of cars. This will damage the consumer and cause them to use mass transit more, as it would be more profitable to buy a bus ticket or even a month of bus tickets for a car. Obviously, one of the largest reasons why we should go into mass transit, and probably its biggest pro, is its help for the environment. As you can see by this graph here, mass transit is the biggest thing that you can do to help the environment. It's bigger than adjusting the thermostat or turning off the lights in your house. It just really helps the environment and also can save you a lot of money. It costs a lot less to buy one bus ticket, about 50 cents, compared to buying a car, about $50,000. As you can see, there's a huge difference here, and it's much more affordable to buy a bus ticket than a car, and it also helps the environment a lot better. So that's one of the largest pros. A huge con of mass transit is the fact that people who take mass transit are taking a lot more of a circuitous route to wherever they're going. As you can see by this image I pulled up, point A to point B is kind of like taking a car. You can drive wherever you want, when you want, while taking mass transit, such as a bus, has stops in between from where you want to go and where you're coming from. So that's a huge con of mass transport. It's only a little bit of an inconvenience, but it's going to cause a lot of people time and therefore money. While many may say that another con is the fact that some trains run on diesel, these are being phased out for electric trains. Thank
I'm
you.
Cynthia, and I'm gonna present the topic Smart Highways and Smart Grids. So, what are smart highways? Smart highway is an innovative technology that makes transportation more efficient, more sustainable, more secure, and eco-friendly. It uses sensors to detect each car, the traffic, the weather, and the road condition so that it can reduce the possibility of traffic congestion and car accidents. It also changes the material used for road pavement from asphalt to solar panels, which is more favorable in energy savings. And it also brought in technologies to charge electric vehicles during the process of moving. The innovation of smart highways compared to the conventional highway is mainly on the change of material from asphalt lanes to solar panels and reducing the burn of petroleum fuels and solve the problem of traffic congestion, which caused an annual waste of 100 hours and $1,400. Reduction of carbon dioxide emissions. So, why does it matter? Transportation now is occupying the biggest section of greenhouse gas emissions. According to the United States Environmental Protection Agency, highway vehicles release about 1.4 billion tons of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere each year, which are mostly in the form of carbon dioxide. Greenhouse gas emissions from transportation is about 29% of total U.S. Greenhouse emissions. More than 100,000 tons of carbon dioxide are released into the atmosphere on an 18-mile corridor each year. And smart highway favor electric vehicles which have lower emissions than traditional cars. Yeah, so through those improvements, smart highways can reduce emissions of carbon dioxide than traditional highways. However, the net cost of smart highways is about twice that of conventional highways. It was estimated at $41.9 billion in 2022 and is predicted to reach $75.3 billion by 2026, which about $4 million per lane per 1.6 kilometers. Smart grids. Smart grids are also innovative in reducing energy consumption. It uses sensors to track the flow of electricity and report the conditions while also allowing the suppliers and consumers to communicate with each other. According to the International Energy Agency, smart grids can reduce the net annual emission of carbon dioxide by 0.7 to 2.1 gigatons of carbon dioxide by 2050. In the United States, investing $340 billion and $480 billion in smart grids technology can yield a net benefit of $1.3 trillion to $2 trillion in 20 years. And thank you.